Gray clouds drifted lazily by in the pale evening sky outside of Gooey's open window. A fan sat on the sill, keeping the air circulated inside of his stiflingly hot room. Gooey stared at the blades turning rapidly inside the metal cage and then back up into the sky. It was too hot. The clouds promised cooling rain soon, but not soon enough. His mother told him this weather reminded her of home, of her planet. It sometimes baffled Gooey that she was from another world, one that he would never know. All she could do was show him the scans on her old communicator, one of the few possessions she had grabbed as she and her people fled from those that sought to destroy them. His mother's eyes always glazed over when she spoke of it, and even then she never said much. Her eyes would glisten with unshed tears, and she would shake her head, telling him all was well now. It was almost a chant. Said more for her benefit than mine, he thought. All he had known was this safe and comfortable neighborhood, this city. Gooey loved where he lived and couldn't imagine being anywhere else. His home was Kumasakurashi, the great sprawling metropolis that was the capital of Japan. A fat brown fish lazily swam past the open window. Gooey immediately knew that it was a Cyprinus carpio, or a common carp. He smiled as he watched it go by. Who would have guessed he would take such a great interest in fish? Not him. Well, not until he met her. Long, flowing bubblegum pink hair flashed in his mind's eye, and he sighed. He wondered what she was doing today. Probably studying, as he should be, but it was just so hot. His next manuscript called to him as well, but it was all he could do to lay on his bed, sweating, praying for a reprieve. A bright smile flashed in his mind, followed by a cute little giggle. He sighed again. He didn't care that he would see her tomorrow morning at school. He had to see her today. Besides, stretching his legs might help get him motivated to do more than lay around and melt. Maybe he'd pick something up for her. Say it was a study snack, give him an excuse to stop by. With his new baito at the bakery, he had more than enough pocket money, and he fully intended to spend it on her as often as she would allow. Gooey hopped out of bed, toweled his face and underarms, put on deodorant, grabbed his crossbody bag, and headed downstairs. The sweet scent of dinner wafted up to him as he neared the kitchen. His mother was taking a pan of lightly browned cake out of the oven. "Oh, Ka-san, that smells amazing!" Gooey lifted his nose to inhale the gentle vanilla scent. "Sponge cake?" he asked as his mother set the cake on a cooling rack. "Hi, dinner will be ready soon. I also have candied edamame rice on the stove." She took off her mitts and went to check the rice. She then looked back at her son, eyes narrowing at the cross-body bag. "Are you going somewhere?" Just to the konbini." He shied away from his mother's knowing gaze. There was no hiding anything from her. He didn't know why he bothered, and added, "And then to the Aikawas." One of her eyebrows raised and the side of her mouth curved up. But all she said was, "Don't be gone long." Gooey kissed his mother on the cheek, his lips sticking slightly to her transparent pink skin. "Itakimasu." "Itarashai," she called lazily as he walked out. He could have sworn he heard laughter in her voice. As Gooey walked down the dimming streets, he let his mind drift back to the place it did all too often these days. He saw deep, caramel-colored eyes, sparkling as they looked at him. He often lost himself in those eyes. He even found himself trying to match their rich color as he made caramel in the back of the bakery. He could never quite do them justice. The konbini wasn't very far, just one street over. He saw the bright yellow light pouring from the windows as he stepped around the corner. The store's neon cloud, their trademark symbol, shone into the lavender sky. Laughter greeted him as a small goat child and his father walked out. The child held a colorful ice pop in one hand and his father's hoof in the other, happily chatting away. Gooey's heart warmed at the sight. What he wouldn't give to hold his father's hand at least once. He had never known his father. He passed away before his mother had given birth to him, but she told Gooey of him often. She explained his warmth and kindness, and how he fought to save the jelly woman he fell in love with so completely after only a few days in her company. At first, his mother thought there was something wrong with his father, He had become smitten so quickly, but after a while, he won her over. At this point in the story, she would always smile wistfully and add, "His heart was so big. All that love had to pour out eventually." It sounded familiar now that he thought about it. He chuckled to himself. His heart was brimming as well, near to overflowing. He wondered how long he could keep his love from pouring out. As he walked through the threshold of the konbini, a little bell chimed and he was greeted by a half-hearted "Irashaimasu" from the girl behind the counter. She looked at him, probably for a little longer than she would have another patron, but she went back to reading her magazine, overall uninterested. It hadn't always been this easy for Jellies in this society, evidenced by his own father's absence, but it had been decades now, and the newer generations cared less and less as Jellies and their offspring became more common throughout the nations. Some still blamed the Jellies for bringing the Akuma to Earth's doorstep, but most have moved on, eager to forget the devastation. The only attacks on Jellies he and his mother heard about now were in faraway places. Gui walked down an aisle, colorful packaging greeting him at every turn. What should he buy for her today? She tended towards sweet, fruity flavors, as he did. He strolled along one aisle, reading the packaging as he went. Berry beetles, choco chips, dim sum doodles. Nothing she would like. He strolled to the refrigerated section. A drink, maybe. Matcha is her favorite. A bright bubblegum pink can caught his eye, the exact shade of her hair. Mainichi matcha, idyllic Ichigo flavor. Gui examined the can. Konpeki. He ended up grabbing some mighty mental chews on his way up to the checkout as well. They claimed to give studying students stability of mind or something. The Aikawa residence wasn't far from the konbini, one quiet street over, and he was in front of her house. All the lights were off, save one upstairs in a room facing the street, and, Gui assumed, one facing the back of the house where her mother's room was. He looked up to her window but couldn't see much except dotted pink drapes and the outline of a plant. He took out his phone and messaged, "Snack break?" He looked from his phone to the window and back. Then, the 3 bouncing dots let him know she was typing a reply. "Oh my god, yes!" Gui couldn't help the grin that spread across his face. He messaged back, "I'm outside." He then heard the window open and a pale face flew out. "Gui, what are you doing here?" she said in a loud whisper. Not an accusation, but a happy greeting. He smiled widely up at her and whispered back, "I thought you might need nourishment for that big brain of yours." He held up the bag. She giggled and his heart leapt. "1 second," she called as she pulled her head back into her room. A minute later, her front door opened and she stepped out into the street with a wide smile on her face. Gui's stomach turned to butterflies as she beheld her. Her skin shone, slightly damp from a bath she had no doubt just finished. She wore pale yellow pajamas edged with lace and spotted with bows. Her bangs were held back by a matching yellow headband, and her pink hair flowed over her slim shoulder in a braid. "Yumiko-chan." He savored her name on his lips. How are you?" he said softly, near breathless at the sight of her, unable to muster up any more volume as she came closer to him. "Good. I've just been finishing up my lab report. It's fascinating, isn't it? The way scales can transform." Gui nodded as she spoke, looking into her beautiful latte brown eyes. He found himself getting lost there, just as he always did. In an attempt to listen to what she said, he shifted his focus to her small red nose. But then, as she spoke, he found his eyes drawn downward. Her lips reminded him of the soft pink tulips that his mother bought sometimes, moist, supple, and so invitingly plump. He felt the heat rise up inside of him, warming his neck and then his cheeks. His already damp neck dampened further. Those lips parted, forming his name, which he heard distantly. He slowly looked back up to meet a questioning gaze, eyebrows raised high. He then realized he had leaned closer to her. He straightened his back again. What did you say?" He laughed nervously. "I asked what snacks you brought." She rolled her eyes. "You always go blank on me, Gui." His face heated further, this time from embarrassment, as he held out the bag between them. Nothing much. Just some tea and gummies." He must be losing his mind. He had almost blown his cover. Their relationship wasn't anywhere near ready for a kiss, no matter how badly he wanted them to get there. Her eyes lit up and his stomach flipped. Ooh, you know I love fruit snacks. Let me see. She reached inside the bag and pulled out his gifts. Nice. Mainichi matcha is one of my favorites. She rolled her neck as she opened the bottle. I really needed to get up and stretch. I've been doing homework for hours. He smiled. I figured, he said as he watched her slender throat bob up and down as she drank. She chuckled. You know me too well. What were you up to before this? Writing? Thinking of you, was Gui's first thought, but he just shrugged and said, nothing much. She wagged a finger in front of him. Have you even started your biology assignment, mister? I know it's hot outside and you hate it, but that doesn't mean you just don't study. She shook her finger some more, giving him a knowing look. Gui laughed. You know the heat drains me of all will to live. Yet you came to see me. Yumiko gave him a sidelong glance as she opened the mighty mental chews. That's because you fill me up again. Well, I figured it's better than laying in bed doing nothing. Mm-hmm. She popped a gummy into her mouth and chewed. Oishii yo, these are super good. She turned the packaging over and read the ingredients on the back, saying as she did, Well, I suppose I better get back up there. A quick glance up at her bedroom window, then back to Gui again. But hey, that accusatory figure came up again. I'll text you in 1 hour to check in and see if you've started. His eyes focused on that slim finger, prettily manicured, her fingers long and dainty. He often wondered what it would be like to hold her small hand in his own. Gui supposed he couldn't have hoped for much longer of a visit, not with her strict schedule, but he wouldn't let her be done with him just yet. Yes, but I was thinking, do you want to visit the aquarium this weekend? We haven't been in a while, and I heard they got some new exotic species from the Arctic, or something. Ooh, yes! I found out only yesterday. I'd love to. I'll let Nanami know too. Then her excitement turned to something else as she seemed to recall something. Her face began to flush, those round cheeks glowing bright. Maybe we'll see Kunimoto there as well. Yumiko looked away from Gui, sheepish. Kuso. He had forgotten Kunimoto-san worked at the aquarium now. Yumiko had a huge crush on him, and in some sick turn of events, Gui had promised to help her talk to him whenever he had the chance, since he and Gui were in the same class this year. At first, he thought it would pass as her other fancies did, but this crush was hanging on. Gui understood, he supposed, as handsome as Kunimoto was, but there was nothing to him. Not really, he was just a pretty face. His mood soured a bit, but he tried not to let it show. Yeah, we might. Who knows? Gui said with a strained smile and a shrug. Yumiko nodded her head, eyes full of hope, thoughts full of Kunimoto-san. Gui fought the urge to groan, never quite sure what to say when this topic came up. Well, I better get going. Let you study. With the subject change, she went from sheepish back to a good-humored scowl. And let you study too, she said with harrowed eyes. Gui sighed dramatically, but smiled. Hi, I'll even send you a photo of me starting. She raised her brows and a smirk came to her lips in a you better sort of face. Then she raised up the snacks in her hands. Thank you, Gui. This was really sweet of you and exactly what I needed to get me through the rest of that lab. Gui softened again, the sourness that had crawled into him oozing out. Of course. Anything for you. With a final smile that dazzled him, she turned to go back inside, stopping and waving to him at the threshold. I expect a text from you soon. She pointed a warning finger at him again. He gave her a thumbs up and a returning smile as the door closed. Well, at least he had seen her for a few minutes. It was enough for now. He sauntered his way back down the street, opening the still cool tea can he had entirely forgotten about, and began to think on how they could avoid seeing Kunimoto-san at the aquarium this weekend. Either way, his heart lightened at the thought of messaging with Yumiko-chan the rest of the night. He would be sure to have many questions about his lab homework.
Hey, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for listening to my very first short story, Snack Break. I hope the story and the paintings you saw on screen brought some joy to your day. I plan to tell stories in this little world called Kumasakurashi for many years to come, so you can look forward to more Yumiko and Gui's progression and development, as well as many other characters. Also, you may have noticed that I used quite a few Japanese words in this story. Because the story is based in a fantasy Japan, I did want to incorporate some Japanese. So I'll just read off a quick list of some of the words you might have heard and then explain what they mean. Baito means part-time job. Ittekimasu, I'm leaving. Itterashai, please go and come back. Irashaimase, welcome. Kaa-san, mother. Kanpeki, perfect. Konbini, convenience store. Kuso, dang it. Mainichi, every day. And oishii yo, delicious. Hopefully that's helpful. It's super exciting to have this first story out in the world. And yeah, I'm super excited to start working on the next one. So look forward to that, and we'll talk again soon. またね。
Hello, Nini.